back with our fantasy football preview. Thank you to everyone that checked out our quarterback, running back, and wide receiver previews. What we're going to go into now is we're each going to give 5 of our breakout candidates for the 2016 fantasy football season. And I will let my co-host go first with his quarterback breakout candidate.
So, by breakout, first of all, we're looking at a 10 to 12 team league, standard scoring, half-point PPR. By breakout, we're not talking about sleepers. We're talking about someone who is within 100 ADP, which basically a player drafted within the top of 100, who we expect to make the next leap, maybe top 20, top 30, finishing overall the season.
Yeah.
So it's a player that you've heard of. It's not going to be like, oh, I already know this person. It's like, yeah, we know, but we expect this person to take the next step.
Like you might be looking at them as maybe a second, third, if not a first-round pick next year.
Right. So when we're making our picks, we're thinking about values, that where they drafted at and where do we expect them finishing. So first, starting with quarterbacks, my breakout player, Andrew Luck. A lot of people are like, oh, breakout player? I know Andrew Luck's good. Well, no, not really. He had a pretty terrible year last year. Colts were expected to go to the Super Bowl. They were a dark horse Super Bowl team, and they fell flat. Luck wasn't healthy. He finished with 15 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in 7 games. But if you project that out on a full season, it's about 35 touchdowns, give or take, assuming he gets 1 or 2 or 3 rushing touchdowns. So his ADP right now is at 37, somewhere around the 4th round. And I think he's going to overachieve that and finish the top 5 as a QB, right around the 5 mark. And Knuckle, I know you're looking at me to hit a rebuttal, but one thing I'm going to say is look back at 2014. He had 40 touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns. And that was on a full season with majority of the same cast. They might have lost some players here and there. Pretty much the same team. I mean, that O-line was still broken then. It's still broken now. They have the addition of Ryan Kelly. That should help. I can't say the defense was any better. I think the defense being poor actually helps his case because they'll be down a lot.
That is true. That's true. And I mean, I can't complain too much because, as you know, in our draft on Sunday, I took Andrew Luck to be my quarterback. Oh. But again, I wouldn't have done that if he wasn't falling. And I agree with your point completely that his ADP is a lot lower than it should be for a guy who was probably the number 1 ranked fantasy quarterback coming out into the draft last year.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about tiers, right, you see Cam up there, right? Cam's probably his own tier.
Yeah.
Tier 2 is probably A-Rod and Russell Wilson. And Luck has fallen to that 3rd tier. I mean, he's almost in that Blake Bortles, Ben Roethlisberger.
Ben Roethlisberger went before him in our draft.
Right, yeah. I took Big Ben. Yeah. So I think Luck can easily finish in that tier 2, and he can possibly finish in tier 1. And if you get his value, you probably got him. I mean, you got him after Big Ben.
I got him really late, yeah. So I mean, if you watched our quarterback preview, I talked about the fact that I almost never draft quarterbacks high, and the example I gave was unless Andrew Luck falls to around round 5, which in our case he did.
Right.
And I took him really late after I got guys like Antonio Brown, and Demaryius Thomas, and people like that. So
and he is a running threat.
Yeah.
He doesn't run the ball a lot, but he definitely can run it. So Knuckle, who's your quarterback breakout player?
All right, so I thought I was being a little bit clever by picking a guy who's already kind of performed before, but I got another Andrew, but he shortens it to Andy, Mr. Andy Dalton.
Knew that was coming.
So right now, his ADP, I cheated a little bit. We said it was going to be top 100, but he's 109.2, which is criminally low for a guy who, before he got injured last year, was a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. And if you guys out there who, in our case, we like Kirk Cousins this year, the reason that people are drafting Kirk Cousins this year off the last 3 weeks, think of that over 13 weeks, and that's exactly what Andrew Luck was doing last year. If you take Andrew Luck's 3,250 passing yards before he got hurt and his 25 passing touchdowns and extrapolate that out over 16 games, that gives you exactly 4,000 yards and exactly 30 touchdowns, which is about 100 yards less than what Kirk Cousins had and maybe 1 less touchdown. So take that production over an entire season. I know that Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones left Cincinnati, but I still trust that offense. AJ Green's still there. Andy Dalton's still a smart guy. He's going to find ways to make that offense work. And rookie Tyler Boyd is getting rave reviews out of camp, so maybe he steps in and fills either the role of Mohamed Sanu or Marvin Jones. But I love Andy Dalton this year.
How big do you think? I agree with you, by the way. But how big do you think Eifert's injury status is on Dalton's production? Because it's really uncertain. They don't really know how long Eifert's going to be out.
I think it's huge. I mean, Eifert was obviously a huge red zone threat, but receiving yards wise, he didn't really make that big of an impact last year. His biggest contributions came on touchdowns because he gave you those 3 touchdown, 2 touchdown games pretty often. until he got hurt, and now his status is up in the air. But at the end of the day, I still think that Andy Dalton is smart enough to be able to distribute those looks to other people in the red zone. So
right. So let's move to running backs. Breakout players and running backs. I know a lot of people don't like spending early picks on running backs because a lot of them are boom and bust. So this is definitely a position where you can draft someone in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round and get first-round value. One guy I'm going to say you probably hate, C.J. Anderson.
Oh, God.
From Denver. So hear me out. One of my biggest rules in fantasy football is getting a good running back on a good team. Denver, they won the Super Bowl last year. They obviously lose one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Enter Mark Sanchez. Defense remains the same. You still got the receivers on the outside. Same running back. Same offense for the most part. I think they'll be in favorable positions where they can run the ball and they don't need to abandon the run. Excuse me. One interesting fact I want to bring out, Knuckle, is under Kubiak's offenses, there's been 8 running backs break the 1,000-yard rush mark, which is insane. 8 seasons Kubiak has had a running back run over 1,000 yards. And that includes, he was offensive coordinator with Shanahan, of course. So that includes, the Denver running backs. So Kubiak knows how to use his running backs, whether it's Portis, whether it's Forsett in Baltimore. I think he's going to be able to use them a lot with that zone scheming. Mark Sanchez, I don't know if they're going to put him in positions where he's going to throw 30, 40 times. So his stats last year, CJ only had 800 yards, but he had 4.7 yards a carry, which if you give him a full workload, which he didn't have last year, that's a top 5 running back. 4.7 yards is really good.
But to that point, he's not going to have a full workload this year. They have Ronnie Hillman, and they've added DeVante Parker in the draft.
Has Hillman ever given you, excuse? So he's not a red zone threat.
He's
Hillman.
not, yeah.
He's a receiving threat, but to my point, they're going to be running the ball.
You don't need to convince me of this.
Yeah.
I know they're both
Hillman's
awful,
not.
but,
Yeah,
but it's the Broncos and John Elway and Gary Kubiak that you have to convince.
Right. But I think in the 4th round, you're basically drafting at an RB2 who has RB1, low end RB1 upside, and he could finish. It's all touchdown dependent, right? Who's going to score? I don't see Sanchez having more than 20 touchdowns. So, and I don't see Hillman having more than 3 or 5. And for the rookie, who knows? We'll see what happens. C.J. Anderson's not the bell cow, but he's going to get majority of the carries.
He's going to get majority of the carries. I agree with that.
4.7 yards, I really can't argue with that. But who do you like?
So, I kind of have for my running backs. I'll tell you about one of them right now, but I went with two second-year guys here. And the first one is the guy who a lot of people soured on very quickly because of his performance last year, and that's Melvin Gordon from San Diego. His ADP right now is 92.9, so he's right on the fringe of what we're looking for here with the guys with ADP of 100 that we think can make the jump. He had a 44-yard touchdown reception in the first preseason game this year, which was his unofficial first touchdown in the NFL. He also finished with 3 rushes for 12 yards, but when you're looking at that offense and how running backs have performed historically there, you can see him getting over 200 touches when he's the guy. So barring injury, and unless he comes out even worse than he did last year, he's going to have the opportunities there. And I could see him finishing there, but based on this ADP, you're talking about the 10th round?
Yeah. No,
I think you could see him, you could potentially get 4th, 5th round value out of him, which is why I have him on this list. I'm not saying he's gonna be next year's David Johnson and go nuts for 4 games or anything like that, but I could see him moving up to higher than where he's being taken this year.
Yeah, but they drafted him so high. I think it was a 2nd round pick. When you draft a running back, was he late 1st round, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
middle 1st round actually.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember him being later. But that's a if you draft someone that high, you're gonna utilize him. And I'm a little worried though because Danny Woodhead was amazing last year. Every 3rd down, they took out Melvin Gordon. I don't know if it's pass blocking or his inability to receive off the backfield. And also, Woodhead had the red zone targets, which is, you don't think because he's a small guy, but he was a red zone guy there. He had 6 receiving touchdowns last year.
This is valid. Melvin Gordon needs to improve in a lot of areas. Yeah. That includes pass blocking and catching out of the backfield. But
he's a rookie after all.
He's a rookie. So, you expect that he maybe learn a bit of those things coming forward. And even on that 44-yard touchdown catch, you saw him run a defender over on the way into the end zone. So you just see him trying to make an unnecessary move. You saw him follow his blocks. You saw him get it to the hole and hit it hard and make it to the end zone. That's one of the promising things I see about him coming into this year.
Yeah, in the second year, you see a lot of running backs take the next step. So he's lined up for that. You said you had 2 running backs?
I did. So you want me
to
name the next one? So another second-year running back, Ameer Abdullah, in Detroit. So last year, you're looking at he had 168 touches for 597 rush yards, 25 receptions for 183 yards, 3 total touchdowns. Right now, he's going to be the lead back in a pass-heavy offense that's moving on from Calvin Johnson.
Yeah.
And after Jim Bob Cooter took over last year, Matt Stafford was the 4th highest-rated passer in the NFL over the last 7 weeks of the fantasy season, so ending in Week 16, behind only Kirk Cousins, Cam Newton, and Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I heard that stat today. I was actually really shocked.
Yeah, and then so Ameer Abdullah himself only had 4.69 yards a carry, which was top 10 amongst running backs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people might be watching us and thinking like, oh, I thought you want a running back on a good team. Well, this team throws the ball a lot.
Yeah.
But Ameer Abdullah's skill is receiving, and he's more of that fast, shiftier back, and he feeds into that.
He does. So that's why I see him taking that jump up this year, because like he's already done 800 yards.
Yeah.
As a rookie, and what we fantasy owners everywhere called a disappointing season, which the numbers say otherwise.
Wow, counts, yeah.
So I think if he takes even a little bit of step forward, you're talking about 1,000 yards, maybe 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen like people like Theo Riddick and like shiftier backs do well in this offense. So I like that comparison definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's those are my 2 running backs. Who do you got?
So I went over my running back, obviously C.J. Anderson. Let's move down to receiver. Same team actually. Marvin Jones Jr.
All right.
Made the jump from Cincinnati. Currently ADP is at 98, so bear with me with 100. At 11th round. So last year he had 800 yards and 4 TDs, which is okay, like maybe a wide receiver 3 for most teams in like a 10-team league. Not too thrilled with that. He's obviously the second option in Cincy behind AJ Green, maybe even the third behind Eifert. Yeah, probably the third actually. Maybe even the fourth behind Gio Bernard. That being said, he moves into a role which I initially thought he'd be the backup or the second receiver to Golden Tate. And you actually told me this that apparently he's killing it in camp. He's number 1 in the depth chart as a wide receiver. And
big guy. He's always made the most of his touches in Cincinnati. There's a guy named AJ Green there.
Right. So also we talked about how much the Lions like passing the ball. Stafford has thrown over 600 times 4 times in his career. That's insane. So to put things in perspective, Aaron Rodgers has never thrown over 600 times in his career. Has only thrown over 550 once. So Stafford's done 604 times. He's broken the record, I think, twice. So that's a lot of balls. And when you're replacing a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Calvin Johnson, you assume Ameer Abdullah is going to get some of that. You think Golden Tate probably will get some. But I like the guy that takes the top off the defense, a big receiver, and Marvin Jones.
That's 149 targets that are going to have to be distributed elsewhere.
Right. I mean, think about 600 targets being allocated between probably 3 main guys in Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, and Ameer Abdullah, obviously, without any injuries. So I like Marvin Jones. I think he finishes as a wide receiver too, and I'll take a fly on him in the 10th round.
All right. Yeah, no, that's a good call. I like him a lot going into this year. My guy is DeVante Parker. Being taken. This is another pretty safe pick. I know you guys have probably heard about him from a lot of people, but it's valid. All the points are valid. We know how much of a freak he was coming out of college. One of the most athletic guys coming into the draft. He has an ADP currently of 81.2, which is putting you in the 9th round, which is a great spot for a flyer on a wide receiver that you think could have wide receiver 2 or even high end wide receiver 1 upside.
Right.
Last year he finished with 396 yards, 42 catches, and 3 touchdowns in the last 6 weeks. You add Adam Gase to that as head coach. We know what he's done with wide receivers before. Ignore Chicago last year because that wide receiver core was in and out the whole time. But if you go back to what he did with Denver, even if you are a believer in Jarvis Landry, the second wide receiver in Denver's offense historically took 20% of the targets. And if that's going to DeVante Parker, then you're talking about a good chunk of passes when Jarvis Landry's getting everything inside. You can kind of extrapolate that DeVante Parker's going to be getting everything deep.
Yeah.
Along with maybe a little bit of Kenny Stills mixed in. But DeVante Parker has all the skills. He has a head coach that has a great offensive system that can get the wide receiver the ball, and that's why all the signs are there for this guy to have a breakout year coming in 2016.
Yeah, and I think I don't try to read too much in training camp reports, but apparently Jordan Cameron is struggling a lot we've been like waiting for Jordan Cameron to take the next step, and some reports came out that he's been like off on some routes and stuff like that. So it's definitely opportunity, and I like Tannehill. I think Tannehill has all the potential to be a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Do you see him finishing? But Parker, do you see him finishing around Landry's like at the end of the year around like the same area? Do you see Landry still as like the number one receiver there in fantasy terms?
I see Parker finishing above Landry by not like maybe a good 5-10 like spots amongst wide receivers, because Landry's got his catches are all within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and Parker's gonna be able to get those medium to high level, deep level of targets, and he's going to be able to do that very well. It's to the point that I think you're going to start seeing Tannehill kind of spread it out a little bit more and try to get the ball to Parker, and while Landry still works inside. But from the depth of Parker's targets and the touchdowns he'll probably get based on getting the ball deeper, I think you see him a good couple spots ahead of Landry in the wide receiver rankings by the end of the year.
Absolutely. So do you have any more receivers, or can we move to tight ends?
That's my only receiver.
Okay. So moving to tight ends, my player to make the next step from your favorite team, not the Skins, but the Jaguars.
Ooh.
Julius Thomas. So we all remember Julius Thomas' magic with Peyton Manning 2 years ago. I mean, I think he had like 13 touchdowns. He was an absolute monster. I was one of the guys who was like, oh, he's just a product of Peyton Manning. You know, I take him out of Peyton Manning's system and that offense, see what he does on the Jaguars of all teams.
Enter Blake Bortles.
I know. And then last year, I mean, he started off training camp by breaking his hand. So think about it. You're a tight end. From a blocking and receiving perspective, you break your hand.
Your hands are very important.
Yeah. So he, in his last 7 games, he had touchdowns in 4 of the games and one multi-touchdown game. That's what you want from a tight end, getting a touchdown in every other game. And unless you're getting Gronk, you can't expect that from any other tight end, maybe Jordan Reed.
Yeah.
So that was really good value. He's getting drafted at 83, which is right around the 10th round. I think if you're waiting on a tight end, if you don't get one of the top ones by Reed, Gronk, maybe even Olsen, I would wait and try to get Julius Thomas. I think he has a lot of value. And I also see the Allen Robinson and Hearns getting a lot of attention this year because they broke out on the scene. No one really knew what to expect for them. So give a full year of Julius Thomas in training camp. I think he's going to get a lot of touchdowns. I think he finishes top 5 tight end.
Top 5 tight end. What was his ADP again?
83.
83.
Right,
I'm going to raise you 1 ADP with my tight end.
84.
82.
Oh, 82.
So
Oh, yeah.
one spot higher. Philadelphia tight end Zach Ertz.
Thought about that one, too.
So last year he caught 75 passes for 853 yards and 2 touchdowns. And now Doug Peterson comes over from Kansas City, and it's been well documented how much they love their tight ends to the point that they don't even throw it to the wide receivers in the red zone. Save for Jeremy Maclin. And I'm going to compare him to their Kansas City's current tight end, Travis Kelce, who had 72 catches for 878 yards and 5 touchdowns. So you're talking about the fact that Ertz had 3 more catches for 25 less yards and 3 less touchdowns. If he makes up that ground, the guy who's being drafted as the 4th tight end right now and has similar production to Kelce, that's a steal. Because right now he's being taken in the 9th round, probably as like the 9th or 10th tight end. So I think coming into the system, you know how it favors tight ends, and you know Zach Ertz has the talent as a former second round pick.
It's funny. I feel like there's so many tight ends that we're waiting for breakout. There's like literally from like 5 to like 20. It's like all these guys have so much potential, and picking those like 2 right ones. It's like this guy could easily have like 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, and even to us, like I know like fantasy football players are in love with Jordan Reed right now,
right?
But you know, part of you still hears it as him as the number 2 tight end, and you're like,
oh yeah. Yeah.
Do I want him?
Yeah,
like
it's
this
like
high?
we know, but at the same token, we've been like saying how good Jordan Reed's been the last couple of years, and no one believes us
exactly
because he's always hurt. Funny side note: apparently, if all our quarterbacks go hurt, he's our 4th quarterback on the depth chart.
Yeah.
So interesting fact.
Good luck replacing Darrell Young.
Yeah, but so this was our breakout segment. These are players that we like based on their value. Can definitely provide upside, help you win your league.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, we'll see them being taken a little bit earlier next year.
Good luck.
All right, thanks for joining us. Check out Nik Nak Podcast.